Hi everybody and welcome to Friday Night Spotlight, brought to you by Jones Ford Buick GMC, your hometown dealer for more than 50 years. I'm Brian Wright and I am with Maria Vasquez, and we are talking more Pinal County High School football this week as we head into week 4. So our game of the week is going to be Maricopa going on the road to Glendale Apollo. Maricopa is off to a 1-2 start, and they're playing a winless Glendale Apollo team at 0-3. Now Maricopa is kind of a tough team to get a beat on because their schedule is kind of all over the place, number one, and number two, they've had some pretty significant injuries early on. They do have a quarterback, Cipriano Childers, who I think can really be a factor for this team, but he's been banged up. And then they do have a very dynamic running back in Mr. Chavis. He's also been banged up. So I'm not really sure how healthy the Rams are going into this matchup. But Maria, when you take a look at Maricopa going up against Apollo, what are your thoughts?
Well, the starting guys that they had last week, filling in for Childers, it was freshman Cassius Campbell, and then at running back it was Kevin McIntosh and Stephen Forrester. These three guys did as good a job as can be expected going up against Scottsdale Saguaro. So going off of that, I think they have a better chance going up against a winless Apollo who has just struggled big time. They've only been able to muster 158 total yards of offense during their 3 games, and it's hard to find a bright spot for Apollo.
I think this is one of those get-well games for Maricopa, and I mean, you could actually look at that in more ways than one. I mean, it could be a get-well game as far as them just getting a victory and playing well and kind of getting their confidence back a little bit, and also a get-well game just physically because, as I mentioned previously, they got some guys banged up that they really do need to get healthy. And when I look at Glendale Apollo, like Maria said, they've really struggled. They've been outscored 101-25 in their 3 games, and I think this is a really good opportunity for Maricopa to come out and just establish itself, do what it wants to do. I know that Brandon Harris will have his team ready for Apollo. And Maria, do you have any final thoughts on this matchup?
I just think, like you mentioned, this is a good learning experience for them. It's not a Scottsdale Saguaro, but I think the young guys, if Childers and Chavis aren't available, this is going to be a good chance for them to get those repetitions in.
Yeah, and just speaking about Scottsdale Saguaro real quick, I mean, that score 70-14 that Maricopa lost last week, you can kind of throw that out the window with Scottsdale Saguaro being, the powerhouse that it is, and it's 20 Division I players, give or take, and they're going to put a hurting on a lot of teams. So I think this is a good opportunity for Maricopa to get back and kind of show what they can do this week. That does it for our breakdown on the game of the week, and enjoy the games on Friday night. All right, we are going to transition to the picks portion of our program. So, week 4, we're going to start with a Thursday game, which is Apache Junction going on the road to Poston Butte. And Poston Butte has really looked outstanding in the first 3 weeks, going undefeated. And not only are they scoring a bunch of points and running the ball with authority, with Zion Burns, of course, and Gavin Lloyd at quarterback, but they are playing some great defense. And AJ had a good win last week, so I think AJ is kind of trending in the right direction. I just think the Broncos are too strong right now. I'm going with Poston Butte.
So the past couple of weeks, I bet against AJ, and I've gotten burned bad. So you know what? Call me crazy. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going against AJ again and picking the Broncos. Brian mentioned they have a phenomenal defense this year, and for AJ, not to be outdone, but sophomore quarterback Gavin Lamangelo, last year's quarterback, younger brother Gibson Lamangelo, Gavin is pretty much following along in his older brother's footsteps. So far, he has 739 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and he's also rushing. He's also had 3 touchdowns rushing and 281 yards. Next, we have the game of the week, which is Maricopa at Glendale Apollo, and this is kind of a coin flip for me, in trying to decide who to go with, but I'm thinking Maricopa. I just think they're a little more better offensively. Their guys, whoever's filling in, they have a little more cohesiveness than Apollo right now.
Yeah, and as we mentioned in talking about the game of the week earlier, you know, there's a lot of kind of question marks with Maricopa health-wise, but I do think that whatever team they roll out there and whatever rotations they have, I think they have enough, you know, to beat Glendale Apollo. So I am going to take the Rams, and I do believe that playing Saguaro last week, Scottsdale-Saguaro, even though, you know, they get blown out in that game, I think that can be a good learning experience for Maricopa. You know, they know what the best of the best looks like, and now they just move on from there. So I'm going with Maricopa. Next we have Casa Grande Union going on the road to Scottsdale Desert Mountain, and I'm covering that game, so I do not have a pick.
And I'm going to take Desert Mountain. They're a 5A school to start with. Second 5A school CG Union has seen on their schedule. The first one was South Point Catholic. They played a really good game against the Lancers, but here I think it's going to be a little more difficult. Desert Mountain quarterback Aiden Cerullo, he has a 69% completion rate, 6 touchdowns, and over 580 passing yards. Contrary to him, Angel Flores, good quarterback for CG Union, but I think it's going to be too much for the Cougars to handle defensively. Our next game is Vista Grande hosting Phoenix North Canyon, and I think in this game Vista Grande has the better offensive attack with quarterback Donald Altaffer, and I'm taking the Spartans.
Well, I do think that this is going to be a pretty competitive game, but you know, I've watched Vista Grande the last 2 weeks, and turnovers are just killing this team. And Donald Altaffer, like Maria mentioned, he's had his struggles protecting the football. And you look at last week's game against CG Union, they had 6 turnovers in the first half alone. And I just think that Vista Grande needs to clean it up a little bit before I can put them in the win column. So I'm going to take North Canyon. Next we have Santa Cruz hosting Welton Antelope. And you know, Santa Cruz is really through the toughest part of its schedule already. And Santa Cruz has just been so dominant so far. I really just don't see any way that Welton Antelope can stand up to their physicality and their talent. And the Dust Devils, you know, on both lines, offensive line, defensive line, they're strong. They're good at linebacker. They're good at defensive back. They got a fantastic rushing attack. Hunter Ogle is just a superstar, and they're going to be far too much for Antelope. I got Santa Cruz.
And I will be covering that game, so I do not get a pick. Next, we have Sequoia Pathway traveling to Arizona Lutheran. And Sequoia Pathway really struggled last week against Chandler Prep. This was their first big challenge in the AIA, and quarterback Alex Montaño, he really struggled. He only had 49 passing yards and 1 interception, when in the previous 2 games he had over 200 passing yards. So I'm taking Arizona Lutheran in this game. I think defensively it's going to be too much, and they're going to put a lot of pressure on Montaño.
Yeah, I think Maria, you know, mentioned it when their previous game against Chandler Prep. That was really a struggle for them. That I didn't necessarily foresee them struggling that way against Chandler Prep, and I think that, you know, Arizona Lutheran is kind of one of these established 2A programs that's been really good for a long time. And I just think that Sequoia Pathway probably has a ways to go before they start competing with and beating a team like Arizona Lutheran. So I'm going to go with Arizona Lutheran in that game. Next we have Florence hosting Chandler Valley Christian. This was a kind of a late schedule change due to COVID-19. And, you know, Florence got a big win last week after they had kind of struggled to hold leads in a couple games. So that's good for Florence's confidence. However, Valley Christian is a very strong program in 3A, and I just don't know if the Gophers are quite on the level of a Valley Christian yet, so I got Valley Christian in this one.
I agree with Brian on this one. Valley Christian, it's a family affair out there. You have Jaden Hansel, who's the quarterback. He has thrown 12 touchdowns, over 700 passing yards, and his go-to receiver is his cousin, Andrew Hansel, who has caught 5 of those touchdown passes for 340 yards. Our next game is Coolidge hosting Mesa Eastmark. So last week was a really great bounce back week for running back Greg Rodriguez. 16 carries, 151 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns. I expect him to keep it going this week.
Yeah, Mesa Eastmark is one of these teams. In first year in the AIA, I really don't know too much about this program, to be honest. But I know that this is not a team that is ready for a Coolidge Bears team that is still going to be a strong contender in Class 3A all year. Like Maria mentioned, Greg Rodriguez, very dynamic running back for them. He should have a big game. You have a lot of good players on the defensive side of the ball for the Bears too, and I expect them to get after Mesa Eastmark with their defense. So I got the Bears in that game. Next we have ALA Ironwood going on the road to Gilbert Christian, and unfortunately for the Warriors, they continue to struggle, and they actually had a blowout loss last week to Coolidge, and just kind of waiting for some signs of life from ALA Ironwood. Haven't really seen a whole lot yet, and I don't think that they are going to get in the win column this week, so I have Gilbert Christian winning this one.
I'm also taking Gilbert Christian. Last week they played against Florence. They were just coming off their 14-day quarantine, so they didn't really have any practice time at all, and they were still able to put up 230 yards of offense. So I'm thinking, this week they're going to have their practice reps, and it's going to be a tough night for ALA Ironwood. And our next game, which will not be played, is Combs versus Arcadia, because Combs is also going through its 14-day quarantine.
And similar to Combs, Santan Foothills is also in the same situation under COVID-19 protocols. So their game, which they were going to play Florence, is postponed. Both of those games may or may not be rescheduled. We don't really know at this moment. That does it for our picks. Remember to visit PinalCentral.com for all of your Pinal County football action, and we'll see you next week.